Hello, I'm George Donikian from Donikian Media. A unique opportunity, a special podcast to speak to the Chief Scientist out of the Republic of Cyprus, who's in Australia. First time in Melbourne. He's been to Australia before, but we want to find out what his vision is for what the country of Cyprus has in mind over the next 10 years. But before we start, I'd like to find out from Demetris Skourides, welcome, and more importantly, what's the role of a chief scientist?
First of all, thank you for inviting me, George, and it's lovely to be here with you. The role of a chief scientist is a role that is entitled and actually is designed in a way to really future-proof the research and innovation ecosystem of a nation. In fact, the role of the chief scientist closely works with a deputy minister of digital policy of innovation and research in really providing policy advice and also acting as an enabler to really making the research and innovation strategy happen in the nation. So the chief scientist essentially is a bridge across other nations, is also entrusted with the responsibility of really looking further ahead and not just a 3 to 5 year time frame, and at the same time creating those programs and really advising scientific advisors, other policymakers with regards to the tools, the structures that they need to build for them to operationalize, for them to build research, for them to advance innovation, and then transform this into technology that really captures the market.
And Cyprus right now, especially under your leadership, has basically set a plan. The president has set a plan for Cyprus, the 2035 plan, and it's given you something important to go out and not just offer up to the community. But I remember catching up with you in Cyprus, in Limassol, during the Cypriot diaspora, the gathering of ambassadors, I think as you put it at the time, earlier this year. And you said it was important to leverage the energy of all those ambassadors, all those Cypriots who'd come back into the country, to say to you, we're here, we're proud Cypriots, but we also have some important intellectual property and we're happy to share it with you. And you said, what a great thing that is. Now, you're in Melbourne, you're in Sydney, and then you're off to Canberra. But what's the message while you're in Melbourne for all the diaspora and for all those who want to do business over the next 2-3 years, 5 years?
Thank you very much. So first of all, going back to the initial point,
Yep.
Cyprus Vision 2035. It's a vision where we actually want to transform Cyprus into a place, the safest place where one can live, work, and do business in. As part of that, when we look into our research and innovation agenda, we translate that into an area saying that we want Cyprus to become a regional hub, a gateway for innovation, for research.
Well, you're beautifully positioned, aren't you?
Yeah. We are. Actually, we are in the Southeast Mediterranean, very closely related to some innovation powerhouses. We're building the bridges with memorandum of understandings with other nations, and I think the Minister of Digital Policy has actually just signed last October, I believe, one with last February, one with Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, on artificial intelligence. Last October it was with Japan, and we're really building those bridges. But what does this mean when I actually refer to the discussion with the diasporians in Cyprus? What I meant is that the diaspora is a great ambassador vehicle for innovation that can travel from their country to Cyprus and into the EU, and from Cyprus into another country backwards. So it's not just a one-way bridge.
No, it's a two-way bridge.
It's a two-way bridge. Now, let me just build on this premise. When we're talking about an Australian company or a company here in Melbourne, a startup, Melbourne has some of the most innovative startups. I think you have universities here like Monash, the University of Melbourne, that
Correct.
actually have very strong capabilities and competencies across a variety of, let's say, fields. These companies, eventually, they build solutions that can only scale across the world. If they're just built for a smaller, let's say, environment, 25 million people, they're not going to be able to scale. When they're looking at growing that business and operationalizing their opportunities, they're looking at going into a new market. Europe is a market of a 19 trillion euro opportunity.
90 trillion.
19 trillion. That addressable market is a very big market. And when a company comes in from another continent into Europe, having to comply with the regulations, having to actually work on the European guidelines, adhere to the laws, etc., requires certain blueprints, certain test beds. Now, Cyprus is a nation where less than 1 million people. We're actually very strongly performing on research and innovation. We are a great opportunity to become that test bed that unlocks the opportunities and really helps companies open, that trap value. And as such, the actual premise and the incentives that are there are attractive enough for companies to actually organize, or let's say restructure their business in a way that they can capture these two markets, and even if they're innovative enough and they can have an adjustment on the business model to create a bridge.
I noticed that you are also running a podcast called the Fearless Future podcast, which suggests to me that you believe that there are plenty of new opportunities around the corner, and they're being inspired and led perhaps by AI. Now, AI for some people is to be it intimidates them, but for others they see it as a magnificent vehicle or a tool to do the heavy lifting. How do you see AI, and why now? Why are we so? Is it about the computer technology that is allowing us to have that power to use the AI properly, or is there something more important that's driving it?
Well, I think that's a very good question. Let me just take us back to a year called 2004. So for those of you who don't remember,
I remember.
2004 was a year when actually Greece won the Euro, right?
Yes.
Since then to today, the amount of data that we actually deal with has increased by more than 18,000 times.
18,000 times.
However, right, the amount of hours we work for are not reduced. The complexity we actually have to deal every day we go to work hasn't decreased, it's increased. And the actual rate of change out there in the economy, the dynamics in the environment is simply increasing and growing at a phenomenal rate. So on one side, we humans have a lot of work to do, and it's only getting more and more. And what we can actually use are these tools, some of these tools that can help us actually rebalance what I would call work-life, rebalance what I would call, capability, and harness these opportunities. Now, what AI is a technology, and I won't go, I think, into the specifics of the technology, but what I would say, it is an enabling technology that, if used correctly, it can help us achieve three things.
The heavy lifting.
It can help us achieve the heavy lifting. I mean, why would we want to go and start, summarizing documents when some tool can do it 90% faster than us? It can do it, I think, in a simplified way, and it actually creates, I think, a productivity benefit for us. However, right, what we need to do is we need to step back and think, where do we create value with AI? And focus ourselves in our times and redesign the processes, the tasks that we're dealing with, so that we humans actually invest our time where it actually matters.
The time imperative. You give it a different energy, don't you?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And that is the game changer. That is the logic behind the Fearless Future. So the podcast series of the Fearless Future is all about helping create the awareness across the world that AI is a tool that we can actually leverage and shape in a way that we can actually move or pivot to a human-centric world where we can coexist, where machines serve humans, support humans, and we actually can benefit from this time that we can save.
Now, the reason why you seem so comfortable with this technology is because you've had a successful career at Oracle. That was one of your major platforms, AWS, before you've led this recent innovation. What motivated this transition of yours, though, to move from the corporate world to national leadership, to be part of the government of Cyprus?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Living in the corporate world, we had, I think, a focus on really advancing technology and helping nations, helping companies harness the technology and really serve, I think, business impact. However, that is mostly related on always performance increase on a year over year. And sometimes when you look on the other side and you look at, how fast is public sector changing, what do citizens really want, right? For them to actually have a better citizen engagement, a better, engagement with the government.
Mm-hmm.
These are not always at the same time on a balance.
No.
So when the opportunity presented itself, I talking to the presidency and me having the opportunity to take this role, I reflected back to an experience that I had back in 2021, where I almost passed away from COVID. And I remember then that the government actually had the structures in place to really mobilize the units and really get me the amount of medicine that I needed. And what mattered then was that everybody in that chain mattered. Everybody was important. And I wanted to bring this flexibility and enable, the government, the public sector, in thinking out of the box in a new way.
To respond in a better fashion.
To respond in a better fashion, to really think about how to use technology not as a means to automate everything, but as a means to serve customers, to create...
And turbocharge things, huh?
And turbocharge things. And
yeah.
I think this, plus the experience basically that I carried, I think brings a phenomenal amount of, let's say, ideas, business model innovation that can actually help us transform and embrace the citizens, right? Serve the citizens.
So that health emergency got you to refocus and rethink about what tomorrow was likely to bring. So AI for you is a very important tool. What legacy, let's look ahead, do you hope to leave through your efforts to transform Cyprus's innovation future? What are the things that you want to leave behind? Because I know that you're very keen to help the president make 2035 something, not just a vision, but actually bring it to life.
Well, 2035 will come to life, and it may come to life a bit earlier than 2035.
But it's an ambitious vision, huh?
It is a very ambitious vision, but I would say that, first of all, it's our duty as citizens today to build a future-proof platform that our successors can actually build on.
Yeah.
And I think looking at the capacity we have from a research perspective in Cyprus, from an innovation perspective, a technology perspective, we have some of the world's top scientists, researchers. We have amazing evangelists. We have 2 Nobel Prize winners, and the most important thing is what we want to do is we want to build the right building blocks there. So my legacy, if I were going to describe my legacy, I would want to actually have the capability of enabling every citizen to have a personalized journey when he interacts with the government by 2035. That means instead of a citizen having to go to different ministries to actually facilitate their journey, to be able to really do that out of the box within their hand. I think by 2035 we can get there.
One portal,
one mobile app, one engagement application, right? Where you can actually log in, right, and it will know that your visa, for example, for X country has expired. Just click here and it renews. Or you have a speeding ticket, right, and you can actually see the points and you can say, why am I getting speeding tickets this year, right? It's because I'm rushing around when I'm going through just this junction. Maybe that's correlated to a specific, let's say, timing where I'm leaving work a bit late. And that way you can actually start understanding, right, more about how you interact with the environment. We can't get there in the next 2 or 3 years, but I think with the rate of technology, with the building blocks that we're building, I think getting to an area where we could actually help every citizen have a better understanding of their health, have a better understanding of their interaction around their finance, around how they're handling, for example, their taxation and their contribution to social insurance.
It will also require, though, each and every one to have a better education opportunity to upskill. Yeah, we keep talking about addressing the challenges of tomorrow, but education is a part of that too, isn't it?
You're absolutely right, and that is a second part of the legacy, is actually bringing together and designing, I would say, the necessary policies and the enabling, let's say, tools that will actually help our citizens to get ready for this new brave world where we see technology coming in very fast. I mean, when we look out to analysts, right, be it McKinsey's or PwC's and others, what we are seeing is that we're expecting the amount of upskilling and reskilling to be actually coming in at a rate of every 18 months.
Every 18?
Every 18 months. So I would say that in the next 5 years, what we're going to be seeing is that we're going to be having to go into a continuous mode of ongoing and continuous learning. And that, though, will actually open a phenomenal number of opportunities for people. I mean, today we see executive assistants. Tomorrow we'll be seeing, right, digital workplace orchestrators, where their job won't be just to, reply and put a calendar invite or schedule a meeting, but they will be there to actually enable a leader or the team to be able to really create and capture that value. We see today, for example, that we have lawyers. Tomorrow we'll be seeing also, let's say, AI compliance officers. So there's a lot of jobs to be created.
New jobs that haven't been, as they say, they haven't existed before, but they're likely to with the opportunities that present themselves going forward.
Of course. And I would say, I mean, if we look back into the 50s, we see that 70% of the jobs we have today didn't exist. But at the same time, if we look back, right, we also see that 54% of the Forbes 500 companies don't exist anymore, which means that this rate of change is really changing the environment. It's changing exponentially. And as we said, the amount of data has changed by 18,000 times. So what we're seeing is we have to really prepare our companions, our citizens, I think, employees and all our partners for this new world. And that requires a very different level of thinking.
What about funding?
Well, funding. At the European level, we do have various tools. We have institutional funding, we have government funding, we have R&D funding that comes in, we have specific programs where the EU is enabling member states to actually develop those competencies. However, what I'd like to note is that for all of this to be effective, you need to actually have a strategic plan and execute it well at the right time. You cannot take somebody today who doesn't know what digital skills is and really make them an AI expert or a user. You cannot really take, for example, a school that hasn't used artificial intelligence and immerse it into artificial intelligence tomorrow. And this is where I think the work that we're doing across the globe, and I think also at the EU level with the EU AI Act, comes in very, very handy and is very important because it gives us the opportunity to really look at very carefully the sectors, the use cases, and prepare carefully for what we will actually use. Because a machine, once you train it with data that is incorrect or is biased, you end up having a model that is biased, right? So,
or capable of creating hallucinations and results that you don't want.
Exactly, and those hallucinations can actually mislead people, right?
Yeah.
It can actually underestimate risks. It can actually lead to people make misinformed decisions, and it creates a bigger problem. So all of these elements together, right, require a fundamental rethinking of how do you actually bring AI into the workplace, AI into society, AI into healthcare, AI into law practice, AI into accounting, AI for, I would say, elders, and it's a fundamental issue.
And I can see the innovators saying to you, okay, we need the funding, that'll be our inspiration, our driver, and we'll take it to the next level. And you say that Europe and the Republic of Cyprus has also got a plan, this part of this vision of 2035, to provide key funding. What sorts of money are we likely to see in terms of many millions of, I think in this instance, we're talking euro?
Yeah, so let me just say that on the level of funding at the national level, which is the competitive funding from Cyprus, over a 7-year time frame, we're looking at about 240 million euros that is actually given through an organization called Research Innovation Foundation, which I proudly chair, where we are actually there supporting the research innovation ecosystem. Then we see institutional funding coming in from the government, the Ministry of Finance, through the through the Deputy Ministry of Digital Policy and Innovation, and then we have the European funds, which are basically augmenting on top of that. At the EU level, we're looking at a pool of funds for R&I that are approximately 800 billion euros a year.
800 billion.
So these are going down into cascaded forms, and this number, right, basically has different pillars for space, different pillars for defense, different pillars for chip, for environmental, etc. Now, at the Cypriot level, at the Research Innovation Foundation, we have a set of programs that we basically empower innovators or entrepreneurs, or what I would call innovation companies. For example, if we have a citizen who's an entrepreneur who has a great idea and he wants to actually take this idea and actually create an MVP, a minimal viable product that he can then test later on, he can actually apply for the fund. If he's a successful innovator with us and he gets the fund approved, he'll get 120,000 euros for him to actually build it, and that's equity free. If we have somebody who takes that innovation, that MVP, builds a solution and wants to actually scale that solution and then commercialize it, we have a fund called Seed. That is 500,000 equity free, and that's euros. If we go to taking that forward and really bringing more technology, more business model innovation, building that and really scaling it up before it gets to a scale up phase, we have a program called Innovate. That's 1 million euros, and that's equity free. So what we're seeing right now is that there's many SME companies who have gone past that startup phase, so they're not considered a startup anymore. They're locked in their existing product, but they're seeing that technology is really changing the game very fast. And what they're doing is they're loving Innovate. They're also loving another program we have, which is a blended finance instrument called Disrupt. And through this, what they're actually saying is, okay, we actually have an ambition to scale into this new market. We want to innovate. Either that can be adjacent innovation or it can be transformational innovation, and we want to build that and really scale globally. And they apply for the Disrupt Fund. If they are actually having an injection through a VC that is approximately 1 million, they can actually claim up to 1.5 million additional from the organization, equity free. So these are just the innovation programs. Then there are other programs where where as part of our mission and our strategy to really bring and embed research and innovation inside SMEs and really help them become much more innovative, help them develop the skill of really innovation at the product level or innovation at the platform or doing the R&D. We have programs like Co-Develop, where we give up to 600K for SMEs or enterprises to work with research organizations and co-develop IP. We have programs, for example, that the STEP program we're having right now, where we're basically encouraging those companies who now have their product and they want to actually develop a production line, right? So that they can get hardware products or actual products, right, built and shipped, right, made in Cyprus, shipped to their customers. We actually fund up to 2.5 million euros on that setup of that production line.
We talked very early on in the podcast, and you talked about the gateway, the unique positioning of Cyprus. Is this yet another instance where this helps with the collaborations going forward? The positioning and the way that you've had access to various markets overseas because of your so-called international ambassadors that you touched on during the diaspora in Limassol earlier this year. You said for every one of the members of the diaspora that are here today in Cyprus, taking in what this forum has to offer, you're the two-way leverage ambassadors that are going to take not only information away, but look to do business coming back this way. Is this the right timing? Is this part of what excites you so much and why you're in Australia?
Yes. So why am I in Australia? I think I'll build on that and then I'll go into, building the bridge. So when taking up the role, I realized that Cyprus has an advanced, let's say, research ecosystem. However, we're at a stage where we need to, I think, exponentially grow, and that growth can only be achieved when you actually surround yourself and you complement yourself with some of the most advanced research nations, some of the most advanced technology nations or innovative.
This is the leverage you speak of.
The leverage. So what we're doing is we're at a point where we do have synergistic values and synergies that we can create, and at the same time we can also accelerate the level of of research excellence we have. And that basically was a driving force for developing the relationships with nations like Israel, like Japan, like UAE, like United States, like Singapore, like Australia, like India.
India, I was going to say, India's your next one of the next stops, isn't it?
Yes, it's actually on the 16th of September. So
wow.
So starting from that area there, what we're saying is there is the blocks. These blocks basically create a lot of synergistic value. This value can actually be at the innovation side or the research side. The two are very important because sometimes you need to go through a cycle of what I would call fundamental research and then sprint over into innovation. But sometimes you actually need to focus at the technology, at the stage before, I think, the commercialization. And if we look at Australia is an example of a nation that is very well advanced in areas like edtech, like medtech, like agri-tech, like environment tech, right?
Yep.
Health tech. And these areas, right, are some of the areas where we actually have, at the same time, strength that we can group together, but at the same time, we also have an area where we could actually further develop. Likewise, for those Australian companies or research organizations, some of which are the universities that I've actually visited over this week, like University of Melbourne or the Monash, etc.
Yeah.
These are amongst the, I think, top 20, top 30 top universities in the world. Either if you look at their engineering capacity, or you're looking at their school of law or the medical schools, etc. And what they've done is they've actually taken bold steps of really bringing together research organizations within, for example, industry. Like Monash has a great, I think, a great integration of their medical school with the actual university and the hospital. That creates opportunities. So building these bridges builds also opportunities. And the problem that we haven't realized out there as scientists and solved around is that it's 2025 moving onwards. It's not just about solving the problem in one niche or one industry. Technology enables us to bring these together and create a multidisciplinary solution and toolbox. And this is where partnerships generate more value.
Is it a bit like a high tide lifts all ships? Is this the image and analogy we can use in this instance?
Exactly. So thank you for simplifying it for us.
No, the reason I say that is because I'm seeing now clear evidence of major companies from places like you touched on, India. Thomas Cook, India, has established a department and a platform in Cyprus. And that's driving, I think, some of this business. But what is the other trend that is allowing you to see more and more countries saying to you and to the government, we want to do business with you?
Well, I think the trends are at least three. So one, there is the EU opportunity, which is, I think, the addressable market, which we touched on.
Yeah.
B, there is the capability that a partnership with Cyprus, which is a very collaborative nation. We talk about trade agreements, we talk about double taxation agreements, we talk about MOUs, right? So Cyprus is a country which is in the center. If you look at the map, right? Alexander built, for example, Alexandria, thinking that it was the center of the world. Cyprus is a bit more north up, right? So, but what I'm trying to say here is that the geostrategic location of Cyprus and the MOUs makes Cyprus a very good partner for any startup that wants to actually operate across 2 markets or even 3 markets. Now imagine we talk about technology, which is an area where I come from, right? So we're at the stage where we're, I think, modernizing our data centers. We're actually having a government cloud project and an RFP coming up, and we have big hyperscalers that are already having data centers in Saudi, in UAE, in Italy, in Greece, in Israel, in France, etc. Now, the bridge between a startup moving from the UAE to France may be too big. But if you do have a data center in Cyprus that can actually be the glue between both worlds, meaning a data center in Cyprus would be small enough not to create, I would say, exhaustive capacity that would create harm to the environment.
And the tyranny of distance is changed appreciably.
Exactly. Plus, Distance also makes what we call, downtime in terms of connectivity.
Yeah.
So a data center in a small island called Cyprus would actually comply to the EU standards, and because of the MOUs and actually the cooperation to the GCC standard. And that would allow, startups, for example, or innovation companies have a headquarter in one nation called UAE, a subsidiary in Cyprus, or vice versa, and at the same time serve their customers across the two regions, right? And that would actually make faster business, faster, go-to-market speed. It would actually enable faster economy. It would actually enable faster scale, and slowly you connect innovation ecosystems. So when we look at, some of the work we're doing right now with India, or the work we're doing with GCC, or the work that we're about to do and start. We're in development with the ASEAN economy, which is like a $3.3 trillion economy. Yeah. Going to be growing up to.
It's been growing at a remarkable rate ever since Lee Kuan Yew said, "We can."
We can.
The ancient Greeks had an expression, "Εκεί που υπάρχει θέληση θα γίνει." In other words, where there's a will, there's a way. And what you've been touching on, almost from the beginning of the podcast, is just that. We have a will, we have a vision, and now you're outlining how you want to take us there.
Yes. And
in essence,
you're right. And we also have the way, and part of the way goes back to the question you asked before, the members of the diaspora, and that two-way enablement of the bridge. So what we're saying is this value proposition can only be more effective if we actually understand the actual value it can create. And I think that our fellow diasporians like yourself and many other colleagues out there have built, trust within their ecosystem, are, successful businessmen, entrepreneurs, I think innovators that are all looking for that opportunity to unlock the door and the keys into a new market. Now, this opportunity, aligning policy, aligning infrastructure, and enabling, the communication flow between these innovation companies is something that is, I think, much more closer to us than it was 5 years ago. And going back to, I think, the vision, building the blocks, one block at a time, but building them correctly, allows us to build a future-proof platform that will help us grow. And I say this because we don't want to build data centers that are, gigawatt. That's too big. Each data center alone consumes so much energy. But what we want to build is the right size that can actually, enable this bridge to be sustainable. And that creates, I think, two ways opportunities. And what we're really looking at here is that the actual value proposition of Cyprus, I think IP box less than 2.5%, R&D tax discount, that's 120%. If, for example, we have people that relocate into Cyprus and they actually want to invest into Cypriot companies, innovation companies, that's a 50% discount. And that creates an opportunity for people to really start looking at the next big unicorns. So some well-known opportunities, or let's say customers or companies, actually originated from Cyprus. We do have an example which is called Viber, right?
Yep.
Now, as we're speaking, right, we have Cypriot companies that are in the health tech area, like Sozo Brain. We have the German Oncology with their project Davora 3.0. We have companies, for example, in the energy tech area, like Energy Intel, that are, possibly going to be the next unicorns. However, the most important opportunity now is, or important opportunity, is to build the building blocks around so that this value that is created is value that can be shared, right, across with partners. And again, going back to your question, why Melbourne, why now? First of all, we actually had a fire that had a drastic damage, in the Limassol area earlier on this year. What I realized is that we do a lot of research in these emergency systems and fire systems, but if you want to see how you can actually deal with this, you actually go to a country that has some of the most advanced technology in really dealing with fire.
Fire and rain. So Australia
rain,
does very.
Right?
Cyprus doesn't do rain so much.
It doesn't. So for me, it started with looking at these emergency response systems, looking then into the drone policies and how they work and how they're designed, looking then on, into the.
Has the response
agri-tech
been two-way?
Yes, I mean, well,
They've
yes.
been open. They've been open to those questions, and
They've been very open, and I think all of the colleagues here have been very collaborative. I think we found a great platform in terms of exchanging the area where value can be co-created.
Okay.
And I think it's open. It's basically opened the door for the communication to happen. And now what we need to do is to explore, right? How do we actually build that compatibility from the system perspective? I mean, the funding, the tools, the infrastructure to be able to start co-innovating together. And what I'd like to say here is, we look at all of these companies called Amazon, or we look at, I think, platforms out there. The only reason they're, very successful is because they've built a business platform model that allows smaller SMEs to co-innovate with them faster, right? I mean, Amazon is a perfect example of, we don't build and sell everything, but we have suppliers that basically, register with us, and they actually create a two-way platform or a multi-sided platform economy. And I think this is an area where humanity, countries, right, looking at innovation and technology, need to understand better and harness the value of co-innovating together, right, and understanding where this innovation comes. I mean, I heard about, when I was coming to Melbourne, I had no idea that you have here a first research center that has built a state-of-art artificial heart.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So imagine that we are talking about digital twins, and the next phase of what we'll be looking from a research perspective is what we call, for example, virtual human twins. And then on the other side, you have pioneers who have actually designed, developed an artificial heart, and allow startups in the medtech area or the health tech area to start innovating on top of that. We don't need to rebuild that.
No, they've already been pushing that envelope for you, haven't they?
Exactly.
You're also building, as you touched on earlier, you're off to India, but you've got connections in Japan. The United States has always been part of it. You touched on Singapore. How are these trips to the key markets going to position Cyprus as a global innovation hub? You've talked about it, but you need that wonderful interchange of ideas and reciprocity from all sides, don't you? It can't be just you pushing and saying, "Come to Cyprus." There's got to be a quid pro quo, hasn't there?
Yes, indeed. So I think we're at the level where we're not pushing. We're at the level where we are already establishing those corporations as a result of their mutual, let's say, understanding of how we create value. So let me just take two countries as an example, Japan and Israel. Israel basically had an MOU with Cyprus before I actually joined. Japan is part of the work that I've done with the minister. Now, what happens is, once we actually align at the political level and the policy level, and we have an MOU signed, we then need to actually have the funding in place to operationalize it, or I think implement an MOU. What has happened is that we're actually designing this much faster than before. We already have come to a point where we have actually created common programs with the respective research organizations on the other side, and that allows research organizations and companies to come together with common proposals of innovating together. And this has happened with Israel, it's happening with Japan, it's going to happen with other countries as we're moving forward, and it's part of the legacy that I want to leave is, instead of really engaging into research, not knowing what's out there, let's partner together with some of the world's most advanced nations and really develop these highways. But to operationalize them, you also need the funding, you need the programs in place, you need the right mindset, and you need the commitment. And the third I think legacy block that I'm actually trying to change the mindset is lead with accountability. Lead by understanding that we need to create value, not just capture the value and use it, and not think about the future. And
it's got to be a win-win on all sides, is it not?
It has to be a win-win, and I think that in doing so, I think that and the last element I want to have is I want to leave a legacy behind, saying that even a small nation like Cyprus can actually give back to the world much more than it could before, science, innovation, technology, talent is an asset that can actually be used. And if we build trust, we build the bridges, we lead collectively together, we can actually create value to the world that can serve humanity.
Fantastic. Before we wrap this up, you're about to be honoured in Riyadh, exemplary leader of the year in human-centric AI governance. Huge title. In effect, what does it mean?
It essentially means that I'm one of these people who are doing specific work in really advocating for designing systems that have the human at the heart, technology serving them.
Okay.
And to give you an example, one of the pilots that we're going to be operationalizing very soon in the Chief Scientist Office is something we call the Digital Advisor. This example is a tool where AI helps every person in the office to actually elevate their capability in terms of quality spec of work to be done without it threatening them. So it's a tool, it's like a butler, it's like a digital advisor that can take away all of the pain of really not understanding the technical jargon of what is AI or what is quantum computer, and really enabling, for example, policy officers to really, for example, develop suggestions or recommendations. And I'm very happy for this because I think that we need to start steering AI as a means of helping build a better society, helping create more opportunity, help, for example, people live longer, help people have a better work-life balance at home, right, and be home, help people do what they love, right, without thinking about that level of threat. And closing with this, what I would like to say is that it requires a mindset change. It requires reducing the fear that's out there. It requires helping people see it's okay not knowing right how we're going to pivot there together, but what we need to do is develop the right boundaries. That requires having the right conversations, and that's all about, I think, what this award is about.
Well, I'm very excited to hear that. I'm also reminded yet again of that emergency that you had with COVID that nearly took you alive, and you came out of that a survivor, but it also gave you the impetus to look at things in a very different light, and you've just touched on that. Can I just bid you this wish that your visit to Melbourne goes as you desire it to go, but more importantly, when you go to Canberra, you can encourage them to say, hey, the ambassadors that you have here can do even more work if they come back next year and create more energy at the next Cypriot Forum. I hear there's another one in 26, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, will you be there leading the charge?
I will be there, of course, and I mean, it will be an honor to lead by example and hopefully have more of you, I think, fellow citizens, I think engaging with us. And I think before we close, I'll say another thing. Something
Sure.
close at the heart of our president is a program called Minds in Cyprus. It's a program that he has launched where basically he's actually developing, and we're developing the infrastructure and the necessary tools to make it feasible for anybody who wants to return to Cyprus and contribute, and not just fear that there is no job for me as an aeronautics engineer or a chip designer abroad, to really be able to operate across our home. So what I would like to say is that for all of you diasporans out there, we do have programs, we do have tools, we have resources, we have funding mechanisms that help you build, for example, companies, so that you can actually have the option to be at your home or your home away from home, which is back in Cyprus.
Got it. Demetris Skourides, welcome once again to Melbourne. We trust you enjoy a fabulous time in Australia. Make sure you do some shopping before you go, by the way. Shopping down under, very special in Melbourne. It's something that the Melburnians know only too well. And your wife might be charged too. Very excited to see a gift come from down under. That's all we have for the moment. Once again, an opportunity to say a big thank you to the Cypriot diaspora for making this happen. And if you want to know more, make sure you see this particular interview on the LinkedIn Live platform when we send it through a little bit later today. Thank you. Barakallah.